congratulations on Young Werther. I thought it was wonderful. I was laughing out loud. It was a great movie. So well
Thank you
done.
so much. That's very kind of you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I was curious, given the historical significance of the, original novel and Werther fever, I was reading more about it after watching this movie. I was curious, love to hear from you, what sort of sparked, your interest from the get-go to adapt the source material to the big screen.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I'd sort of read the book in college. I had to read it for a class, and I liked it, and it stuck around on my shelf. And then years later, after I'd had some romantic entanglements of my own, I sort of pulled it down and reread it, and it resonated with me in a different way. And it was just one of those moments of like, oh, why hasn't this been adapted into like a major English language thing? Because it's been adapted all across Europe for years, operas, plays, films, comic books. Like there's so many versions of it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this seems like a thing that I could take a swing at. Like the characters seem relevant today, the themes seem relevant, and it just it spoke to me and yeah, dove right in.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
great. Yes, and it's a
Yeah.
wonderful end result. And I was curious, had you also read The Joys of Young Werther?
I've not read The Joys of Young Werther,
Okay.
the response novel that
Yeah.
shows them like happily. Yeah, no, I've not read it, but I
Okay.
probably should. Is it
I
Thomas
was,
Mann
yeah.
who? Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like what you said, it's sort of that satirical, changes the ending and all that.
Yeah. 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 I should. I mean, I now feel irresponsible for having not. That's my homework tonight.
No, it's all right. I mean, he wasn't happy with Goethe wasn't happy with the Joy's book, so
Right.
maybe it's for the best that you didn't. But I thought of it. I mean, I hadn't read the Joys either, but I loved the tone of your movie. It's lighthearted. Like I said, I was laughing out loud. So was there, after reading the book, was there a debate in your mind about a certain tone? Like, were you ever worried about making like getting it too dark or having certain moments be too lighthearted? Or I was curious how that was for you behind the scenes.
Yeah, I feel like the sort of guiding principle, if there was, it was nothing that defined, but I think like the thing in my head was, Werther as a character in the novel through his letters, he just always came across to me as this very funny, like, he's melancholic, he's depressed, he's anxious, but he's also, full of spirit and enthusiasm and reading things the wrong way, and he's manic and he's all over the place. And it felt very much to me the way it feels like when you're confused about uh like a new romantic situation. Like you have so many questions and there's so many ups and downs, and I wanted the film to feel like that sort of emotional roller coaster that a new love or a confusing love or a partially requited, unrequited love feels like, where there are, moments of heartbreak and being down, and then being so up and so buoyant, and yes, I just wanted it to live in that kind of yeah, slightly askew, slightly off, relatable place.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and I love the tone, and it moves, it moves right along, and before you know it, it's over. It's just it's a great
I mean, I love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I want to be transported. I want time traveled. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a uniquely structured novel, of course, series of letters. So for you, adapting it as writer in addition to director, I mean, could you talk about that process if that posed any challenges for you,
Yeah.
turning it into a 90-page screenplay?
Yeah. What you just pointed out, the novel being composed of letters, it was early on when I was working on it, I was like, oh, maybe I'll have him, on the phone to Wilhelm Paul, like maybe I'll Maybe I'll have him texting, writing emails, and I was like, I don't want to like see a bunch of typing on screen. That's gonna,
Yeah.
uh, and so yeah, one of the big changes was bringing Paul in initially as like a device to have Werther confessing all of his emotional turmoil to his best friend. But then I was like, oh, this is a real opportunity to give Paul to give this character um, not just have them be a device, but have them have a real role in the narrative and someone who goes on their own journey and finds a spark of love and have that be a catalyst for a confrontation with Werther that makes Werther reevaluate. And so, those are just those little surprises along the way when you're iterating and writing, when you're like, oh, this will be interesting. And this, just sparks ideas as you're going through. And then at the end of the day, you're like, this isn't an exact mirror of the novel, but that's okay. There's many adaptations that are a beat for beat recreation, and I feel with something like this, there's room in this, millionth adaptation of the Stories of Young Werther to sort of do it in a way that feels, um, yeah, I don't know, contemporary, fresh, a little different. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. And yeah, I love what you did with it. And yeah, I think people, especially rom-com lovers, are gonna have a lot of fun with it.
hope so.
Yeah. And I was curious, it's a wonderful cast. I mean, I'm such a fan of your principal actors, and I was curious, Patrick. I was curious if before this movie, if you had watched Suits. I mean, that the show has such a resurgence now, and now there's an LA spin-off. I was curious if you were familiar with his work, particularly that show that people are now just revisiting and fanboying and girling over.
Yeah, it's so funny because it was I mean, come on, Suits, Mike Ross, like
Yeah.
this of course. Um but when we were filming, it was I feel like I can't remember the exact time, but I think we were filming sort of just before Suits came to Netflix or whatever happened when it all of a
Right,
sudden
right, right.
blew up in this crazy way because it had a good healthy run on I'm not sure what in Canada.
USA, I think.
USA. Okay, yeah.
Think.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what it showed on up here. Anyway, but yeah, it did have this like insane resurgence, and that sort of happened maybe just after we were filming or around the same time. So I remember talking to Patrick about it when we were doing some pickup voice stuff, and he was like, yeah, it's pretty nuts. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that was it's a great show, great characters, and uh, yeah, it's like. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was another show this happened with, or there was a show years ago. What happened? Was it like Futurama or something that like I don't know.
Oh,
Anyway, whatever.
maybe.
Yeah, shows like can have these great first acts, and then new audiences find them, and yeah, quality work
Yeah.
lives on.
Yeah.
Maybe Suits is it'll have a life as long as the Sorrows of Young Werther novel.
Yeah.
250 years from now, people will be discovering Suits for the first time, and they'll be like,
Yeah. Yeah, of
yes.
course. Yeah. Yeah, probably. And then, Douglas as Werther, I loved his performance. And could you talk about, working with him initially, and to create such a charming character and if there are any things like you maybe wanted to change along the way to create more or less of a lighthearted rom-com feel, if there were any moments where you wanted to go darker or more intense or less intense or have more fun with it, or because it's such an iconic character. I wonder if that was a daunting task for you, like, okay, getting Werther on the big screen, North American cinema here.
Yeah. I think like, Doug is such an innately charming person. Um, and who has, he's such an emotionally intelligent guy and really has that like, to me, has that like Cary Grant thing where he can be a, you know, completely grounded, dramatic actor, like finding the pathos in a scene and, really exploring nuance as a character. And then he can also traverse so gracefully into comedy, and comedy that comes from a place of character, but can just I don't know. I think he's got a rare talent. And I think his interpretation of Werther I love so much, and it's it comes from him. Like it's yeah, like most of I'm stealing this quote from somewhere. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like most of the work of directing is just at the casting stage where you're finding the right people for the role and somebody who not only like understands it as written, but brings their own interpretation to it that elevates it beyond what you would have initially imagined. So there are, moments of performance that, it's just Doug being incredible that like it's not on the page, that like certain looks and certain reactions that just an actor of his caliber can create in the moment, and you're witnessing it more than you're creating it, and cataloging it. Um, and then in the edit, you're looking at options because he'd provide options for, dialing it down, dialing it up. There's a version of the film that's much more maudlin, that's much darker, and there's a version that is more of a straight ahead rom-com. And when I think of the movie, I think of it as uh, like just a timeless romance. That's how I want it to feel. I want it to feel, or I guess not how I want it to feel, but how I feel when I think about it. I think it has its moments of, um, yeah, patience and beauty and, coming of age character, sort of beats. And then I think it has, yeah, enough charm and wit from, the performances of the leads that it just, yeah, feels effervescent, feels like, um, yeah, something I want to spend time with.
Yeah. Well, that's
Sorry, I'm
great.
just going
Yeah.
on and on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of others will enjoy spending time with it. So congratulations again. And yeah, it was great chatting with you. Thanks for taking the time.
You too. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.